Hey everyone! Welcome back to Life Stories Network, where real emotions meet real life stories. I'm so glad you're here today, because the story I'm about to share is one that changed my life forever. It's about love, secrets, and the moment I realized how much a family can hide behind a single smile. This all started on the most important day of my life, my graduation day. But trust me, what happened at that party was nothing like I expected. It was a warm summer evening. I remember standing in front of the mirror, straightening my cap and gown one last time. My heart was pounding with excitement. 4 years of hard work, late nights, and sacrifices had finally paid off. My parents were proud. My sister Emily was smiling from ear to ear, and everything seemed perfect. But looking back now, that smile of hers, it was hiding something none of us were ready for. After the ceremony, my dad hugged me so tight I could feel the pride radiating off him. "You did it, kiddo," he said, his voice shaking just a little. My mom wiped her tears, whispering how proud she was. Emily, my older sister, teased me like always. Finally, the baby of the family made it. Everyone laughed, and I thought it was just a beautiful family moment. But what I didn't know was that beneath all that laughter, there was tension. Quiet, invisible, but very real. Later that evening, our backyard transformed into a glowing celebration. String lights hung from the trees, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. Friends, relatives, neighbors, everyone came to celebrate my big day. My dad was grilling burgers. My mom was chatting with our neighbors. And Emily was busy taking pictures with her friends. It felt like a dream. But something about my dad's eyes that night, the way he kept glancing at my mom, the way his smile faded whenever he thought no one was watching, it made me uneasy. At one point, I noticed him whispering something to my mom. They were standing near the porch, away from the crowd. His lips barely moved, but his expression said it all. Worry, fear, maybe guilt. My mom's face turned pale. She nodded slowly, her eyes flicking toward Emily. And within seconds, Emily's laughter stopped. She put down her drink, excused herself from her friends, and quietly walked inside the house. No one noticed, except me. I remember staring at the doorway where she disappeared. It felt strange. Too sudden, too quiet. I wanted to follow her, but people were calling my name for pictures, hugs, and congratulations. So, I brushed it off, convincing myself maybe she just needed a break. But that small moment, my dad's whisper, my mom's look, and Emily walking away, would haunt me for days. About an hour later, the party was in full swing. Music played, laughter filled the air, and my best friend Mike handed me a drink. "To your future," he said, clinking his glass against mine. I smiled, but something inside me fell off. My sister hadn't come back. My mom was pretending to enjoy herself, but she looked distant, distracted. My dad kept checking his watch. I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was happening behind the scenes. Something no one was telling me. I finally excused myself and went inside. The hallway was dark, quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. "Emily," I called softly. No answer. Her bedroom door was slightly open, so I pushed it gently. The room was empty, but the window was open, curtains swaying with the summer breeze. On her bed lay her phone. And that wasn't like her at all. Emily never went anywhere without her phone. My heart began to race. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. Then I saw it. A small envelope sitting on her desk, with my name written in her handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should open it right then. But curiosity won. Inside was a short note, written in her usual neat, careful script. It said, "I wish I could stay and celebrate with you, but I can't pretend anymore. You'll understand soon. I love you. Always am." My stomach dropped. What did she mean she Can't pretend anymore. Pretend what? I rushed outside, scanning the yard for her, but she was gone. My mom was near the cake table, trying to smile, but her eyes were red. My dad was still talking to guests, but I noticed his forced laughter. I knew something was very wrong, and whatever it was, my parents were hiding it from me. The rest of the evening felt like a blur. People laughed, danced, took photos, but all I could think about was that letter. I replayed every word in my head. You'll understand soon. Understand what? When the last guest finally left and the lights dimmed, I confronted my parents. My dad was cleaning up the grill and my mom was stacking plates. "Where's Emily?" I asked. My voice was calm, but inside I was shaking. My mom froze. My dad looked up, his face tightening. "She wasn't feeling well," he said quickly. "She went home early." "That's not true," I snapped. "She left her phone here. She left me a note." My mom's eyes widened. "A note?" she whispered. My dad's jaw clenched. "You weren't supposed to," he started, then stopped himself. That made my heart pound even faster. "Supposed to what?" I demanded. "Tell me what's going on." But before either of them could answer, my dad sighed heavily and said, "Not tonight, please. It's your big day. Let's not ruin it." His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment, I saw something raw in his eyes. Regret, maybe even fear. I wanted to press him, but my mom stepped in, gently touching my arm. "Please, honey," she said softly. "Just rest tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, replaying every moment of the evening. The whisper, Emily's sudden disappearance, her letter, my parents' nervous faces. I kept wondering what they were hiding. By morning, my curiosity turned into determination. I needed answers. So, as soon as the sun came up, I went straight to Emily's apartment across town. Her car was parked outside, but when I knocked, there was no answer. I called her name, rang the bell again and again, but nothing. Finally, I used the spare key she'd given me months ago. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was off. Her usually tidy apartment looked half empty. Some drawers were open, clothes missing, a few photo frames gone from the shelf. It looked like she had packed up and left in a hurry. On the kitchen counter was another note. This time, it wasn't addressed to anyone. It simply said, "I can't live in this lie anymore." My hands went cold. My chest tightened. What lie? I took the note and sat down at her kitchen table, trying to breathe. Then my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Her voice was trembling. "Honey, can you come home? Your dad and I need to talk." When I got home, the mood was heavy. The same house that was filled with laughter last night now felt like a place full of ghosts. My dad was sitting in the living room, staring at an old photo album. My mom was beside him, tears streaming down her face. When I walked in, they both looked up, like they'd been waiting for me. My dad motioned for me to sit. "You deserve to know the truth," he said quietly. I held my breath, bracing myself. He took a deep breath, then began. "Before you were born, things between your mom and me weren't perfect. We went through a really rough time, and during that time I made mistakes." My mom closed her eyes, as if reliving old pain. My heart pounded faster. "What kind of mistakes?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then said, "Emily isn't just your sister. She's your half-sister." The room fell silent. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. "What?" I whispered, not believing my ears. My mom's face turned pale. My dad continued, "I had an affair before you were born. Your mom forgave me, and we tried to move on. Emily was born a few months later. We raised her together because she's family. She's ours. But lately, she found out the truth." I sat there frozen, trying to process what I'd just heard. "She found out?" I repeated. My mom nodded. "She overheard us talking a few months ago. Since then, she's been distant. We thought she'd accepted it, but last night, I guess she couldn't handle it anymore. Tears filled my eyes. I thought of Emily's note. I can't pretend anymore. It suddenly made sense. She had found out that the man she called Dad wasn't really her biological father. My heart ached for her. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. My voice cracked. I had a right to know. My dad looked away. "We didn't want to hurt you both," he said softly. "We thought keeping it buried would protect the family. We were wrong." I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to make sense of it all. My childhood memories, family trips, birthdays, Christmas mornings, all flashed before my eyes. Everything suddenly felt different, like I'd been living a story that wasn't entirely true. But even through the shock, a part of me understood why Emily left. She must have felt lost, betrayed, confused, and I couldn't blame her for walking away. That day, I promised myself I'd find her. Not to demand answers, but to let her know she wasn't alone. No matter what blood said, she was my sister. Always had been, always would be. But what I didn't know then was that finding her would uncover even more secrets, ones that would turn our entire family upside down. I couldn't think about anything else for days. Emily's empty room, her half-written note, my dad's confession. It was like my world had been flipped upside down. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. How long had everyone known? Why didn't anyone tell her sooner? And what was she going to do now that she knew the truth? The house was quiet, too quiet. Mom tried to keep busy, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning. Dad buried himself in work, pretending everything was normal. But every now and then, I'd catch him sitting alone on the porch, staring into space. He looked older, smaller somehow, weighed down by the guilt he'd carried for years. I knew I couldn't just sit around, so I started looking for Emily. I called her friends, her co-workers, anyone who might have seen her. Most said they hadn't heard from her in days. One of her friends, Cara, said Emily had mentioned leaving town for a while. That scared me. Emily was spontaneous, sure, but disappearing completely. That wasn't like her. I decided to check one last place. Our grandparents' cabin by the lake. It was where Emily used to go whenever she needed space. I hadn't been there in years, but something told me that's where she might have gone. I packed a small bag, left a note for my parents, and drove out early the next morning. The road was quiet, the kind that gives you too much time to think. Every mile felt heavier than the last. The lake was surrounded by pine trees, and when I finally pulled up to the cabin, my heart was pounding. The old wooden steps creaked under my feet as I approached the door. I knocked softly. "Emily, it's me." For a moment there was silence. Then the door opened, just a crack. And there she was. Her eyes were swollen, her hair tied messily, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low. "I had to see you," I said. "You left without saying goodbye." She looked down. It was easier that way. We stood there for a long moment before she finally let me in. The cabin was dim, but cozy. A few candles burned on the table, and her laptop was open, next to a half-empty mug of coffee. I noticed a box of tissues and a crumpled photo on the floor. A picture of our family from years ago, torn in half. I didn't know what to say, so I started with the truth. Mom and Dad told me everything. She froze, her eyes filling with tears. "Everything," I nodded. "About Dad, about how you found out, about who your real father is." She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't want you to know like that," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted to tell you myself, but when I heard Dad whispering to Mom that night at your party, I knew they were talking about it. I just couldn't stay." I sat across from her, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why didn't you come to me, Em? You could have told me anything." She looked up, eyes red. "Because I didn't want you to look at me differently." That broke me. I reached out and took her hand. "You're my sister, Emily. Nothing changes that." I don't care who your biological dad is. You'll always be my sister. She squeezed my hand, a tear sliding down her cheek. You always say the right thing, she whispered. But it's not that simple. The man who raised me, the one I called Dad, he's not even my real father. And the worst part? He's been lying to me my entire life. I could hear the pain in her voice. She wasn't just angry, she was heartbroken. And I understood. Betrayal from the people you trust most isn't something you can just forgive overnight. We spent hours talking. She told me about the day she overheard our parents arguing, how she'd been walking past their room and heard my dad shouting something about the past not staying buried. She said she froze, then listened through the crack in the door. That's how she found out. She confronted them that same night, and that's when the truth came out. They begged me not to tell you, she said. They said it would ruin the family. And you kept it a secret all this time? I asked. She nodded. I tried, but every family dinner, every photo, every holiday, it just reminded me that I didn't belong. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. We sat in silence for a while. The sound of the lake outside was calm, almost soothing. I wanted to take her pain away, but all I could do was be there. Then, she said something that made my heart skip a beat. There's more you don't know. I frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated, biting her lip. I found out who my biological father is. My breath caught. You did? She nodded slowly. I didn't plan to, but after I found out the truth, I started looking. Mom never told me his name, but I found some old letters in her attic. Ones she must have hidden. They were from a man named Robert Hale. The name didn't ring a bell. Do you know who he is? I asked. Emily gave a small, bitter laugh. You might. He owns Hale Construction, the company Dad works for. My jaw dropped. Wait, what? You mean Dad's boss? She nodded again. Yeah, and apparently, he's my biological father. The room fell silent. I didn't know what to say. The man who had been part of our family's life for years, who came to our house for holidays, who sent gifts every Christmas, was actually Emily's real dad. That's insane, I whispered. I know, she said. And it gets worse. He's known for years. That made my stomach twist. You're saying he knew? And he said nothing. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. He paid Dad off years ago. To keep it quiet, I found bank statements. I found letters. He even sent money for my college fund. I sat there stunned. My dad, the man I looked up to, had been living with that secret for years, pretending everything was fine, while hiding the truth that the man who signed his paychecks was the same man who fathered his first child. Emily wiped her tears. I wanted to confront him, but I couldn't do it alone. That's why I left. I needed time to figure out what to do next. I took a deep breath. Then let's do it together, I said. He doesn't get to hide behind money or secrets anymore. You deserve answers. Emily looked at me, unsure. You'd really do that for me? Of course, I said. We're family, no matter what. Over the next few days, we planned everything. We decided to meet Robert Hale face to face. Emily wrote down everything she wanted to say. I promised I'd stay beside her the whole time. When the day finally came, we drove to his office downtown. It was a tall glass building, the kind that screamed success. Emily's hands were shaking, so I reached over and squeezed them. You got this, I whispered. We walked inside and told the receptionist we needed to see Mr. Hale. She smiled politely and said he was in a meeting. We waited. When his door finally opened and he stepped out, the look on his face when he saw Emily said everything. Shock, guilt, recognition. Emily, he said softly. She crossed her arms. We need to talk. He led us into his office and closed the door. The air felt heavy, tense. He motioned for us to sit, but Emily stayed standing. You knew, she said. All these years, you knew who I was. Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. Yes, he said finally. I knew. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. He looked up, his eyes full of regret. Because your father, your mom's husband, asked me not to. He wanted to raise you as his own. He thought it was best. Emily's voice shook. You both took that choice from me. You decided my entire life for me. He stood, taking a step toward her. You have every right to be angry, he said. But please understand, I was young, scared, and selfish. I didn't know how to do the right thing. I watched as Emily's walls began to crumble. She wanted to hate him, but a part of her wanted to understand. He looked at me then. You must be her brother, he said softly. I nodded stiffly. I am. And I'm not here to judge what happened years ago. But you need to make things right. For her. Robert's eyes softened. I want to, he said. I never stopped watching out for her. I always made sure she had what she needed. Emily's lips trembled. I didn't need money. I needed truth. He nodded slowly. I know. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then, Robert did something unexpected. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a locket. Your mother gave this to me when you were born, he said quietly. I wanted to give it to you one day, but I never had the courage. Emily stared at it for a moment before taking it. Tears filled her eyes again. But this time they weren't just of anger. They were of release. You can't fix the past, she said softly. But maybe we can start fresh. He nodded, his eyes glistening. I'd like that. We left his office in silence. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Emily looked lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. I don't know what happens next, she said quietly. Whatever it is, I said smiling. We'll face it together. She smiled back. The first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. But the story didn't end there, because a few weeks later, when I thought everything was finally settling down, life threw us another curveball. One that would bring the whole family face to face again. And this time, it was my turn to make an announcement that would change everything. Weeks passed after that day with Robert Hale, but the air around our family was still heavy. Like a storm waiting to break, Emily tried to reconnect with Mom and Dad, though it wasn't easy. The wounds were still fresh, and trust didn't come overnight. Still, we were trying. All of us were. I'd visit her every other day, bringing her food, checking in, making sure she didn't feel alone anymore. For the first time in a long time, we were actually talking, really talking. Not just pretending everything was fine. She told me about her therapy sessions, how she was learning to forgive, not for them, but for herself. And I told her something I'd been hiding too, that I'd been offered a job out of state, a chance to finally start the career I'd dreamed of. She was so happy for me. You deserve that, she said, smiling softly. You've always put everyone else first. Maybe it's time you live for yourself too. Her words stuck with me. I didn't know it then, but they'd become the reason behind what I was about to do next. 2 weeks before my big announcement, Dad came into my room one night. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with his wedding ring. I heard you're thinking about taking that job offer, he said. Yeah, I said, closing my laptop. It's in Seattle. Big opportunity. He nodded slowly. That's great, son. You should go. I could tell he meant it, but there was something behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe sadness. Dad, I said carefully, you did the best you could. I don't hate you. None of us are perfect. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. I'm proud of you. I don't say that enough. And I hope, one day, Emily will forgive me too. That hit me hard. Because beneath all his mistakes, my dad was still human. He had made terrible choices, but he was trying. And sometimes, that's all you can do. The next day, I called Emily and told her I wanted to organize something special. A small dinner to bring everyone together. No drama, no secrets, I said. Just family. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. I spent days planning it. The same backyard where we'd had my graduation party was now cleaned up, with soft lights strung across the trees and a table set for 5. Me, Mom, Dad, Emily, and Robert Hale. Yeah, that's right. I invited him too. Mom nearly fainted when she heard. You what? She gasped. Mom, it's time, I said. No more hiding, no more whispering. We need closure, all of us. When the evening came, the air felt thick with anticipation. Everyone arrived one by one. Emily came first, looking calm but cautious. Mom and Dad came next, together but quiet. And then Robert Hale arrived, dressed in a grey suit, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. For Mom, the tension was immediate. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I cleared my throat. Let's sit, I said, trying to sound casual. Dinner started awkwardly. Forks clinked, small talk filled the silence, and everyone avoided eye contact. But slowly, the mood softened. Emily talked about her new art project. Dad even made a small joke about how his cooking had improved since Mom banned him from the grill. For the first time in months, there was laughter. Quiet, hesitant, but real. Then as the night went on, I stood up. My heart was pounding. I looked around the table, at the faces of the people I loved, despite everything. There's something I need to say, I began. Everyone turned to me. I took a deep breath. When I graduated, that night was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But it turned into a night full of secrets. Dad whispered to Mom. Emily left. And none of us were the same after that. For weeks, I hated how broken we'd become. But now, standing here, I realized something. Maybe it all happened for a reason. Maybe it happened so we could stop pretending and start healing. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Emily's lip trembled. I continued. We can't change what's happened, but we can choose what happens next. And that's why I'm making my own announcement tonight. I paused, my hands shaking slightly. I got the job offer in Seattle. It's everything I've worked for, everything I've dreamed of. And I've decided to take it. There was a stunned silence. Mom gasped softly. Dad nodded slowly, proud but emotional. Emily stood up, walking toward me. You're really doing it? She asked. Yeah, I said. I need to. It's time to start my own chapter. Tears filled her eyes as she hugged me. Then I'm proud of you, she whispered. I smiled, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Leaving wasn't easy, not after everything we'd been through. But I knew deep down this was what I needed. Then I looked around the table again. Before I go, I said, I want to ask something from all of you. No more lies. No more running away. We've already lost too much time pretending to be a perfect family. Let's just be real, messy, honest, and imperfect. But together. There was a long silence. Then Dad stood up. I agree, he said quietly. I've made mistakes, more than I can count, but I don't want to lose my family because of them. Emily, I'm sorry for everything. Mom was crying now too. She reached across the table, taking Emily's hand. I should have told you the truth years ago, she said. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself. Emily looked at her for a long time before nodding. I forgive you, she whispered. Robert Hale, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. I know I don't belong here, not the way I should have, but I want to thank you for letting me be part of this. Emily, I can't make up for lost time, but I'll always be here if you ever need me. Emily smiled faintly. Maybe that's enough for now. The tension in the air began to fade. For the first time, everyone seemed lighter, like we'd all been holding our breath for years, and finally let it out. We spent the rest of the night talking, laughing, and remembering the good times. It wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was real, and that was enough. Later, when everyone had gone home, I stood in the backyard alone, staring up at the stars, the same spot where everything had started. I thought about that night at my graduation party. how a simple whisper had shattered our family, but somehow that same truth had also brought us back together. I smiled to myself. Life is funny like that. Sometimes the moments that break us are the same ones that build us again. A week later, I packed my bags for Seattle. Emily came to help me move. She was different now. Stronger, calmer, more at peace. Before I got in the car, she handed me a small gift. "Open it when you get there," she said. When I arrived at my new apartment, I opened it. Inside was a photo of us from the graduation party. Me in my cap and gown, her smiling beside me. But this time, she'd written something on the back. It said, "Family isn't about secrets or blood. It's about love. You'll always be my brother." I sat there for a long time, holding that photo, feeling tears sting my eyes. Because in that moment, I realized something profound. Family isn't what you're born into. It's what you fight for. Over the next few months, things began to change for all of us. Emily and Robert started rebuilding their relationship slowly. Mom and Dad went to counseling, working through years of pain. And me? I was finally living my dream, but with a heart that understood life a little deeper. I called home every weekend. We laughed, argued, joked, like old times. But now, there was honesty between us, and that made all the difference. Then one day, I got a call from Emily. "Guess what?" she said, her voice full of excitement. "What?" I asked, smiling. "I'm starting my own art gallery. Robert's helping fund it." I laughed. "That's amazing, Em. You deserve it." She chuckled softly. "I wouldn't have done it if you hadn't pushed me to face the truth." Her words warmed my heart. We'd both grown in ways we never expected. Months later, I returned home for a visit. It felt different walking through the door this time. Lighter, warmer. Mom hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Dad grilled again, only this time the food didn't burn. Emily brought a cake, and everyone laughed. It wasn't a special occasion, just dinner. But somehow, it felt more meaningful than any celebration before. That night, as we sat together, I realized something. Maybe that whisper, the one that started it all, wasn't just a symbol of secrets. Maybe it was life's way of shaking us awake, forcing us to confront what we'd buried. I looked around at my family, imperfect, flawed, but still together, and smiled. Life doesn't give you perfect stories. It gives you real ones. And sometimes, the best endings are the ones that start with a whisper.